Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and thank you so much for choosing this session, especially with so many other great topics happening at the same time. I'm feeling like a kid in the candy store because this is the first time I'm showing my full doctoral research to an external audience. So I'm very much looking forward for your feedback afterwards. And I wanted to share with you a topic that I have been studying for so many years and living. And I want to talk about why anticipatory design matters more than ever, and how currently approaches in design are not giving the necessary attention alongside with the significant repercussions of this oversight. So without further ado, let's dive into the unfulfilled promise of anticipatory design. But before we dive in, let me just briefly introduce myself and share how I got to research anticipatory experience. So my professional journey has taken me to various industries like fintech, learning, accounting, retail, and more recently manufacturing. But back in 2016, when I was working for a learning company, I designed my first AI recommendation system. And this was my gateway to UX for AI and where I fell in love with the data and machine learning. And because of that project, I decided to pursue a PhD research in engineering, but while continuing always working as a full-time designer. So kind of transforming my daily practice into my living laboratory for my doctoral research. And in my doctoral research, I studied the intersection of AI and design with special focus on human-machine relationships. I have been publishing in UX magazines like UX Matters, Machine magazines, and of course, UXPA magazine about these subject matters. And today's session reflects very much this journey. So we are going to explore what I see one of the biggest challenge, but also opportunity for us today, shaping meaningful human-centered AI experience. And for that, I have structured today's session into three big moments: the dream, the dissolution, and the rebuild. I will start with the dream. I want to share with you where anticipatory design came from and what it promised in theory. Then I will introduce the dissolution. We will examine real-world examples of anticipatory systems and explore why things didn't quite work as planned. And finally, we will move into the rebuild, where we will ask, what should the design response be? I will present a framework, and I hope that this tool can move us from the hype to truly design meaningful human-centered anticipatory systems. And hopefully, by the end, you will leave not just with insights, but with practical tools to design future-oriented experience. But before starting the dream, I wanted to briefly share the foundations behind this session. All the insights and case studies are based on my doctoral research, like I mentioned, which involved the scoping review of 58 products and services that applied anticipatory design across 6 industries like education, healthcare, finance, retail, transportation, and of course, entertainment. From these, only 21 were selected based on a strict criteria to ensure that they reflect anticipatory principles. And this process was essential to identify not just success and failure service, but to map recurring problems and finding patterns that reveal where anticipatory systems are working and where they are constantly falling short. So let's start with the dream. If you have to choose 1 or 2 words to describe your digital life today, what would it be? Anyone want to share 1 word? That's a nice one. How do you feel your digital life is today? Busy. Say again? Overwhelming. That's a nice one. Fast. Very good. So the experiences are diverse. Some of you have more positive feedback, but others, like overwhelming, is a very good negative feedback of something that technology today represents to us. So I want to focus on that dark side of technology today. So let's see if many of you identifies with this scenario. Imagine it's 7 a.m., your alarm starts ringing, and you grab your phone to turn off your alarm, and without even opening your eyes, you probably going to do your basic needs first. You are already bombarded with notifications all that urge to open your work email or personal email or surface your social media notifications or any other type of application. So you start managing notifications of work even you get your first morning coffee. You swipe the notifications, the likes, the comments, emails, but through the day, more keep coming like a persistent, invisible crowd always trying to get your attention. So before your day begins, you have made dozens of micro decisions. What's the weather today so I can choose my clothes? Or which of my manager emails I need to prioritize? Or should I skip the breakfast to squeeze in a quick workout? So before your first morning coffee, you have made more decisions that before technology would take perhaps minutes or hours of reflection. Now they happen in seconds. But at what cost? As the days unfold, your cognitive bandwidth starts to decline. By evening, even pick a Netflix show or movie feels like an exhausting task. We are not just busy today. We are cognitive drain. And any of you can guess the consequences of this digital life. Any guess? Limitless information. So this isn't just a personal anecdote. It's a shared digital condition and technology built to simplify our lives and work has instead left us overwhelmed, creating a new kind of stress, information overload. So the human brain, as remarkable as it is, wasn't biologically built to process this relentless influx of data. So currently, instead of empowering us, technology often leaves us feeling fragmented, exhausted, or overwhelmed. So we have to ask ourselves, how can technology, rather than amplify mental burden, how can they alleviate alleviate our cognitive overload, especially when we are talking about systems that can learn, adapt, and influence so much our lives? Well, Anticipatory Design has the potential to revolutionize how we interact with AI and technology, not by overwhelming us, but by helping us reduce the cognitive load, streamlining interactions, and genuinely anticipate our needs. It shifts technology from being a source of stress, like a demanding child constantly trying to ask for our attention, and move towards becoming a more helpful partner and quietly help us and support us in the background. It operates on the principle that by analyzing user data, such as past behaviors, preference, and contextual factors, systems can predict and fulfill user needs before they arise. Of course, businesses are very drawn to this type of experience because it promises smoother interactions, enhances customer loyalty, and valuable insights through data mining. So anticipatory design promises technology that can think ahead, reduce mental load, minimize friction, and helping us make smarter decisions. The vision is very clear. Systems that filter the noise, surface what matters, and even act before we ask. So, if we live in the world that is generating more than 400 million terabytes of data every day, and if we already have the technology to support this kind of intelligence, then why do we still feel so exhausted, overstimulated, and out of sync with our digital environment? Maybe it's because more data doesn't automatically lead to better experience. And without context, intent, and behavior insights, data alone can't deliver on the promise. Now, here's where things start to go off track. When systems are flooded with data, but they lack a proper understanding of why users behave the way they do, or what context they operate in, they start to make what? That naughty word, assumptions. So when those assumptions are wrong, they don't just miss the mark, they misinterpret our intent. And that's when anticipation turns into frustration, and in worst case scenario, into a real problem if it harms the user in the end. So here's the issue. When systems rely too much on forecasting, which means using past data to guess what comes next, but lack foresight, the ability to imagine different future scenarios and adjust accordingly, they are far more likely to bombard us with irrelevant or ill-timed predictions. And why? Because they are not just really anticipating our needs. They are just extrapolating from what already happened before. But our needs and goals, they are constantly evolving. They are not static in time. And there's another risk. When systems anticipate too much without explaining the why or the how, they start to feel invasive. It crosses a thin line from helpful to invasive. And when systems act too much on users' behalf, they risk eliminating the very aspects people value: autonomy, agency, and meaningful choices. So poorly calibrated anticipation frequently leads to misaligned expectations and user frustration and gradual erosion of trust. So in theory, anticipatory design was meant to be the antidote to our modern overload. It promised to simplify our lives, cut through the noise, reduce decision fatigue, and make every choice feel effortless. But instead, we are still drowning in options. It's hard to navigate e-commerce endless product variations. We got lost in the infinite scroll of content platforms. Every interactions demand our energy and effort. Plus, with this boom of generative AI, we are not making our lives easier because this type of technology, they require our attention. They are reactive, not proactive. They still wait for us to prompt, to steer, to decide, which requires more mental effort without alleviating our cognitive bandwidth. So these reflections lead us to this disillusion part of this presentation. But before diving in, let me just very briefly mention the roots of anticipatory design concept. So anticipatory design has its roots in philosophy, psychology, and in the 19th century, this philosopher, and I hope not saying his name wrong, Kierkegaard, warned us about the anxiety of having many choices. Fast forward to 2004, psychologist Barry Schwartz introduced the paradox of choice, arguing that more options can actually reduce our satisfactions and decision quality. In 2015, Aaron Shapiro, the CEO of huge agency, introduced anticipatory design in an article for the Fast magazine, proposing it as the solution to this premise: fewer decisions, less stress. But this shift didn't start with the Shapiro original idea. It had already begun years earlier, by the late 19th, with companies like Amazon or TiVo, where they were laying the ground using predictive analytics and machine learning to reduce friction and shape user choice behind the scenes. So, Amazon revolutionized e-commerce with their using purchase history with features like customers brought this, also brought that. But Amazon set up the benchmark for personalized recommendation. Then TiVo introduced the ability to learn from users' viewing habits and automatically record shows of interest, making one of the earliest applications of predictive technology in the home environment. Later, in the 20s, Netflix entered the picture. As you all are aware, they introduced the recommendation engine that analyzes users' rating and viewing history to provide personalized movie and shows recommendations. Out of curiosity, any of you have one of these at home? Are you happy with your experience? Yeah. Okay, so Nest was the product that put anticipatory design into the spotlight. They were launched in 2011, and this is an intelligent thermostat that learns from user habits and environment data to adjust temperatures proactive. Its success was so huge that only in 3 years of its launch, Google acquired Nest, moving this product from novelty to the mainstream success. Although it has been around for many years right now, it's still one of the most relevant examples of anticipatory design today. But, however, like many or even the majority of anticipatory systems today, they fell short. They struggle with something very, very important: context awareness. And a very simple example is, for example, if a baby joined the household, priorities change. And these systems are unable to adapt to this context. So comfort and safety for the baby take precedence over energy efficiency. But Nest doesn't know how to adapt to this context. So it performs well until life stops following the data script. This is where automated systems can fall short, when they make perfect sense statistically, but they fail to account for human nuance and priorities. So anticipatory design promises seamless, proactive experience. However, in practice, it's very easy to see how this vision can backfire very, very easily. So in many surveys I analyze, and especially the ones that have failed, there's a common pattern. Engineering teams automated more than users are ready for or even comfortable with. So it often comes from a well-placed, well-intentioned to drive and optimize technology for efficiency or solve complex technical challenge or showcase the technology and even the team's capability. But these end up being one symptom of lack of early UX involvement in the discussion. So instead of asking what the users really need or are trying to achieve, the question becomes, what can the system do? And here's where the real mismatch between the technology and the user expectations starts. And the result, users experience that feels intrusive instead of helpful, and where automation overrides intention and technical capabilities takes precedence over meaningful interactions. So now that we have seen what anticipatory design promise, let's look at what its actual delivery, because somewhere between personalization and predictions, patterns in my research shows that something is getting lost. And the challenge anticipatory designs face today, they aren't just technical, they are profoundly human. So let's start with Digit. I don't know if any of you recall this app, but if none, it's for a good reason, because Digit was designed to help people save money automatically. It analyzed user spending habits and moved small amounts into saving accounts. On paper, it sounds perfect, automated and effortless savings. However, in practice, it overlooks one critical aspect, context awareness. Again, so these services did not account for people living paycheck to paycheck, where small withdrawals at the wrong moment could cause real harm. Plus, Digit didn't account for irregular income as well, or emergency, or just the unpredictability of life. So without real-time awareness, this system in particular triggered overdraft or surprise deductions, creating real stress to the users and not providing security to them. So the problem wasn't the idea or the technology, it was the design. Digit relied too much on past data without adapting to the present. This often stems from an over-reliance on forecasting without enough foresight to account for uncertainty, change, and context. If they had integrated some foresight techniques like scenario planning or horizon scanning, they could have accounted for edge cases and prepare the service experience accordingly. So the lesson, anticipatory design must be flexible. They need to understand real context. And above all, they need to be transparent, because if the users lose trust, the systems fail no matter how smart they are. V-Sense headphones is another example. They were launched in 2016 as the world's first AI fitness coach. It promised real-time voice coaching using biometric data like a personal trainer guiding every second of your workout in your ears. But in practice, we overpromised and underdelivered. It ended up just supporting outdoor running, no indoor or cycling workouts. They did not scale the technology capabilities and ended up offering just 6 static fitness goals. But more critically, we failed where it mattered the most, supporting behavior change. It didn't account for users' motivation states or readiness to act. There was no strategies to build habits over time, no plans for progress, and no meaningful feedback loops to keep users engaged with the product beyond the initial novelty. So instead of guiding the users along a fitness journey, from beginning to expert, we treat everyone the same. The empathy and the voice design were incredible, but the experience were generic. And generic doesn't change behavior. So we, with a better understanding of behavior science, like tailoring interventions to stage of readiness or reinforcing micro success, we could have support this lasting change. And the lesson is that anticipatory design aren't just about responding to signals and data. They are about shaping meaningful experience over time. If they don't help people to grow, adapt, and succeed, they lose relevance no matter how innovative the technology may be. The market is full of failed service, but I would like to highlight one last example. Mint. This app promised to help people manage their financials through automated budgeting and personalized financial advice. The goal was to anticipate users' needs and simplify financial decision-making. But its advice, again, they felt too generic. As a result, the guidance often fell short and users lost interest very quickly. And Mint was ultimately sold to Intuit in 2009, and its original vision faded as the product and the company evolved. So Mint core issue was also a lack of personalization. The system relied on static models instead of adapting to real-time financial data and user behavior. And here's something very important from my research. Many users, especially those with low literacy, financial literacy, tended to overtrust this type of service, assuming it was personalized and expert approved even when they aren't. So this is a very dangerous place for a business to be. But with better foresight methods like scenario planning or user visioning, Mint could have identified different types of users and design advice that match more with their unique perspectives and goals. And the lesson, if a system can't adapt, explain itself, or support user growth, they lose relevance and risk erosion trust. And anticipatory systems must go behind broad forecast and deliver actionable and ethical user-centered support. Otherwise, they just become another app we quickly delete. I don't have much time to cover in detail how many anticipatory services are failing to foster meaningful and sustainable behavior change, but I invite you all to see my UXPA webinar, where I cover this topic in detail. So here's the link as reference, or you can go to the UXPA YouTube channel and search for the talk. The market is full of anticipatory systems that promise reduce friction, help us make better choices. But too often they end up confusing us, acting without consent, or simply failing understanding what we actually need. And why? These systems rely too much on forecasting and not enough on foresight tools that help us navigate uncertainty and change. Therefore, they often miss edge cases, misunderstood the context, and failed to adapt over time. And more importantly, in doing so, they broke our trust. These systems are being built on the assumption that historical user data can stay stable and predictable. But come on, humans are everything but predictable. So we change plans, we abandon our goals, we pick a new habit, and everything in the same week if necessary. So we are not predictable at all. So when behaviors shift, like new financial habits or change in a health condition, we need to pivot to prioritize what we want to achieve, what are our needs. And most of these anticipatory systems are failing to keep up with our evolving needs. So now imagine if Mint had used foresight, not just focus on forecasting. They could have anticipating how financial behaviors were evolving. With scenario planning, for example, they might have seen the rise of users in regular incomes, such the freelancers, the streamers, the content creator that juggle multiple revenue streams, or digital assets like crypto we're changing the way people make investments and saving habits. So with those signals, Mint could have designed a more flexible budgeting tool for variable types of incomes and integrated new asset class into wealth management and keeping pace with real user needs and behaviors. So we can summarize that anticipatory design depends on two key capabilities: forecasting, using the past to understand the present, and backcasting, imagine a desired future and then working backwards to shape today's actions. If forecasting predicts what the users are likely to do, backcasting asks what features do we want to help them reach. It's like designing a service blueprint in reverse. Backcasting shifts the focus from what is likely to what's ideal, enabling the systems to support meaningful long-term behavior change. So it starts with a vision. And this vision needs to be future-oriented, like getting healthier, saving for retirement, or developing a new skill. And then we map out what needs to happen today to make this feature possible. So from all of my research and analysis, I have distilled a simple pattern. Anticipatory design has to balance these three things: trust, agency, and behavior change. So let's evaluate what should be the design response to this challenge. After exploring where anticipatory design fails, it's now time to examine how can we rebuild it for success. And in order to design anticipatory systems systematically, we can understand it as a three-layer model that builds on the pillars of user trust, agency, and behavior change. This model guides us to overcome the very pitfalls we discussed in the dissolution part of this session. So anticipatory systems, they aren't magic. They must start with the user intent at its core. Think of what the user genuinely needs and wants to achieve, surrounded by workflows that define the steps needed to reach that goal or outcome. And finally, support by algorithms that enable those steps through predictive intelligence. See, algorithms, it's the last layer, not the first one. So we need to shift the mindset. This approach ensures that the technology serves the human, not the other way around, fostering genuine trust and meaningful behavior change. And let's comprehend how. For instance, Thrive is a digital wellness platform that aligns algorithms and workflows very well with the user intent. By anticipating the user needs and offering personalized programs, Thrive empowers users to achieve a healthier and a more fulfilling lives. For Thrive, intent isn't just about what the user does, but why they do it. Focusing on intent prevents us making assumptions or over-automated solutions that don't align with users' goals and needs. If we get intent wrong, everything will fall apart in the long term, leading to experiences that feel intrusive or just completely misinterpret what the user is actually trying to do. Thrive workflows, they represent the steps the systems use to fulfill that intent. It's about how the user and the system collaborates, ensuring that the system acts as a helpful partner, and this is where the user agency is preserved. For Thrive, workflows enable the creation of tailored programs that meet the user's specific needs and goals, such guided meditation, breathing exercise, personalized sleep routines, and educational content and coaching tips to promote healthier habits and life changes and the behavior change. So, surrounding it all, we have the algorithms. They analyze the user data to provide personalized recommendations. These algorithms are now guided by the intent and the workflows we establish, ensuring that they serve a clear human purpose rather than just processing data for the efficiency's sake. In a service like Thrive, algorithms perform tasks such as identifying patterns in sleep, activity, moods, and predict the user behavior to recommend intervention that address potential issues. It optimizes the program recommendation based on user's progress and data analysis. So, it's here that anticipatory systems show their full power, because they can predict users before they can predict user needs before they arise, nudging users towards healthier habits or optimizing a plan based on real-time feedback. So anticipatory design is future-oriented by nature. Its power lies in looking ahead, but that is also its most critical and greatest challenge. So to succeed, business must go behind predictions. They must pair anticipation with strategy and deep foresight. So let's move from theory to action and to move behind the unfulfilled promise of anticipatory design. We need a new approach for that. I have built an interactive model grounded on 3 core design anchors and organizing into 3 actionable phases. We have seen where anticipatory designs often fail. So the good news is these failures aren't random. They are systematically, and thus they are actionable. So the framework I'm about to present is grounded in these 3 interdependent anchors, ensuring that systems are intelligent, ethical, and user-aligned. These anchors ensure that anticipatory systems are not just smart, but they are also empathic and resilient, because behavior science helps systems drive real change by aligning their interventions with users' motivations, habits, and readiness to act. And temporal integrations like forecasting, backcasting, and foresight enable the systems to balance short-term signals with long-term outcomes, allowing them to adapt over time and remain relevant as the user's needs and motivations evolve over time. And user intent grounds the systems in what truly matters, helping distinguish between what the users are doing and why they are doing it. So the system can respond meaningfully instead of just reacting superficially. So here's my anticipatory design framework. And remember the failing patterns, the broken trust, the missing context, the loss of control. These frameworks directly address those challenges, providing a systematically way for us UX experts to build truly human-centered AI and anticipatory experience. So the first phase is anticipate, and this is all about user intent. We are going behind just solving today's pain points. This is where we proactively uncover the macro and the micro forces that will shape the user's futures and outcomes. It's not about predicting a single rigid future. It's about preparing for a range of possibilities so we build resilient experience that never caught the user off guard. And once we have anticipated our user intent, we shift to imagine, our speculative phase. This is where we truly embrace ambiguity, and instead of fixating on one preferred feature, we deliberately explore multiple plausible and preferred features to design systems that can adapt and thrive even when the unexpected happens. And finally, we enter the shape phase, our hands-on interactive phase, where concepts begin to take form. This is where we prototype, test, and refine, always keeping the user intent at the core. It involves designing for user control, fostering genuine trust through transparent personalizations, and continuously evaluating how user systems perform across different scenarios. And this phase ensures our anticipatory designs aren't just functional, but truly adaptive, ethical, and deeply aligned with the user's values. So our first phase encourages to adopt an inquiry mindset. And this isn't just your usual user research. It's about deeply understanding the future context in which the user will live and understanding the macro and the micro forces that will influence that user journey. So this is the most critical phase for everything that follows. And we begin with exploration. We can use powerful tools like step analysis or horizon scanning to uncover these emerging trends and weak signals. And of course, simultaneously, use tools like empathy mapping and jobs to be done to gain a deeper understanding of the user evolving needs. Next, we have synthesis. We connect the previous insights with methods like insight mapping, and we try to find patterns to create dynamic personas. And these can't be static personas anymore. They must evolve, allowing us to represent the same personas across to the readiness stage for behavior change. So we need to create more dynamic personas across the entire process, because this will help us understand more complex informations and understand the evolving user motivations. And we can also use AI to leverage this task force here. And finally, we arrive to the vision. This is where we articulate a clear ethical vision for the service we want to create and articulate the long-term goals, roots in users' well-being and values like autonomy, transparency, and inclusivity. So now we shift to the phase 2, the imagine. This is our speculative mindset. We are bravely exploring the full range of possible future scenarios, not just the most likely ones. And this is crucial to building resilient systems and ensuring that our anticipatory design aren't just smart, they must be adaptive, transparent, and truly user-empowering. And we kick off this phase with scenario planning. And I think this is one of the most important steps of this entire process. We don't just plan for success. We rigorously design for failure. We create detailed scenarios that include disruption and errors. We build systems that can fail gracefully without frustrating or damaging the user in the end. And this proactive approach ensures that our designs are robust even when the unexpected happens. And from those future scenarios, we move into alignment, where we translate the vision into actions. We backcast from the desired outcome and map the key transitions, decisions, and interventions users will need along the way. It's about ensuring the systems evolve with the user, guided by intent, context, and readiness to change. And finally, in workflows, we map out the steps or journeys a system must do to fulfill the user intent. This means embrace the robust feedback loops and allows the system to adapt based on users' input continuously. We also establish autonomy protocols, ensuring users maintain control, and we integrate explainability frameworks and ensure that the system's reward function are ethical grounded. And this enables us to foster genuine trust and make our anticipatory designs truly human-centered. In the final phase, the shape is where we move from conceptualizing to build our anticipatory system and bring it to life. So this is our hands-on interactive phase, focusing on creating tangible, trustworthy experience that genuinely adapt and evolve. And we begin with behavioral alignment. This means designing for seamless harmony between the system, what the system does, and what the user expects the system to do. We prototype various feedback loops, user control mechanisms, humans in the loop, to offer different levels of autonomy so the user always feel empowered, not overruled or sidelined by the system. Next, we move to prototyping, especially dynamic, personalized prototyping. This step goes beyond the static mockups, because we need to evaluate living experience that can adapt in real time and also try to begin to build trust with the user. So we need to move away or behind the Figma's interactive, but ultimately still static prototypes, especially because they can simulate the adapt behavior of an algorithm. Therefore, we must partner closely with data scientists and engineers to develop a functional demo or a true MVP. And we use this demo to validate how users will interact with AI and in realistic context, and refine the system's reward function based on direct user feedback. And at this stage, we also test a prototype against the cold start problem, since the system begins with no prior user data. So this is a very big challenge for us designers when designing anticipatory systems. Therefore, we must prototype onboarding flows that help prioritize users' preference from the day one. And this includes mechanisms to guide early personalizations, reinforce user confidence to share his data with the system, and communicate how the systems will adapt transparently and ethically over time. Finally, we engage in the interactive evaluation. This is a continuous process of testing and refining. And we run the usual A/B testing, conduct usability audits, but we now should also do explainability audits to ensure that the system rationale is clear and context sensitive. So these constant feedback loops allow us to iterate and ensure that our anticipatory systems remain relevant, effective, and consistently building trust with the users over time. As we conclude, I would like to emphasize that although this framework provides a strategic and human-centered path for navigating the complexities of AI-driven design, it has not yet been fully tested in a live project or a company setting, but it was built on extensive theoretical research, industry's best practice, and lessons learned from both market success and failures. And this brings me to one of my main quests and one of the reasons I'm here presenting this topic. I am actively seeking an organization or a project where I can collaborate and apply and iterate to refine this framework in a real-world setting. This is a very big topic to cover in just 60 minutes, so I barely scratched the surface. So if you found this session helpful and you would like to explore it further, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or visit my website. I'm publishing a book later this year that explores these ideas in depth with additional examples, methods, and tools to help us design anticipatory systems that aren't just intelligent, but truly context-aware, grounded in user intent, and designed to support real behavior change over time. So thank you so much.